Thank you, Stacy. All is good, sound is good, and we're ready to go. So if it's helpful, I'm going to go back to a place which I'm a little bit more used to talking about. So just give me 1 second here. There, that's a little bit better. I'm on my stage. I kind of missed my stage with the arrival of COVID. So what I actually did was I built a virtual broadcast studio in my basement where I am coming to you from right now. First, a shout out to one of my very good friends, June, Baby June, who is actually a resident of Grand Rapids. Baby June is my son's fiance's sister's daughter. Mel and Marcus Wiersma live in Grand Rapids. Baby June is in front of the computer right now. They're watching live. Hi, Baby June. Good to see you. I was hoping to be there live today, and obviously, the world of COVID has changed our world. I used to go out onto great big stages in Las Vegas in front of thousands of people, and then obviously COVID hit, and now I find myself hanging out in my basement, because we're all living in this reality TV show in which this show never seems to be coming to an end, and this is where I'm actually coming from right now. A 9x12 room with a whole bunch of gear, a whole bunch of lights. It gets darn hot in here, a whole bunch of computers, a whole bunch of technology. Now, I know the world of Zoom presentations is very, very different. Attention spans are different, so I'm going to break every 5 to 7 or 10 minutes and take some Q&A. We're also going to do some text message polling, and here's the first one. I want you to take out your cell phones. I want you to ask yourself the question, when it comes to a fast-paced future, how well do you think you are prepared? Here's what you do to participate. Send a text to the number 37607. And in the body of the message, punch in one of these numbers, 150898. Again, what you do is you send a text to the number 37607. In the body of the message, type in one of these numbers, and if all the technology is working, it's working, there's the first vote. We can get a little bit of a sense as to how you are feeling about the world and going forward in the future. Here's some fun. I used to do this on stage. I was in Texas once with 600 bankers, and I said, take out your cell phones. We're going to do a text message poll. I could see these folks going, I don't know how to text. Do you know how to text? My grandkids want me to text. What do we do here? And out of that room, 8 people managed to get in a vote. Contrast that a couple of years later, I went into my son's high school, and there were 300 kids in the auditorium. I was doing a talk for them, and 297 out of 300 kids responded in the first 30 seconds. So how are you feeling about the future? Just like everybody, it's overwhelming. It's scary. There's a lot going on, and this is typical of all of the trends that I encounter with all of the groups that I do. Now, I'm known as a futurist. I help people to think about what comes next and what they need to do about it. Some people think of a futurist, and they think, somebody who's going to go out and talk about spaceships and the future and, weird science fiction-like stuff and, flying vehicles through the air. That's not what I do. If you heard my client list, I spend a lot of time with global Fortune 1000 organizations where they are struggling to deal with the fact that we live in a world in which the future belongs to those who are fast. Look, NASA's had me in twice. 11 years ago, last Friday, NASA invited me down to the Houston Space Center for a talk about the future of space. And this event actually kind of freaked me out because, this is NASA for crying out loud. I said, who's going to be in the room? They said, we're going to have some astronauts. We're going to have some rocket engineers. We're going to have some nuclear physicists. We're going to have people who are, thinking about how we get to, stars billions of light years from Earth. I'm thinking, these are really smart people. What can I possibly talk about in terms of the future of space? And I started thinking, the future, space, George Jetson. I'm going to talk about the Jetsons. I'm going to talk about this TV show set in the year 2062 to put in perspective where we are going in the future. Here's the thing about the Jetsons. Here's why I spoke about the Jetsons to NASA. It was set in the year 2062, but it's all here today. Elroy had a drone. In one of the episodes, Elroy is flying a drone around the floor. There's flat screen LED TVs. My point for NASA was, we thought the future was going to be far away. It's actually here today. There's iPads, there's tablets, there's Android devices. There's an Apple Watch, just like the Apple Watch I've got on my wrist here today. Amazon Echo devices, these smart home speakers, they're in the Jetsons. They weren't supposed to be here until the year 2062. Snapchat is in the Jetsons. Jane would change her face. She would change her mask. Amazon Prime was actually a part of the show. There's an episode where Jane is trying on some virtual clothing, And she presses a button, and a few minutes later, the doorbell rings and the product is delivered. Isn't that what we're all doing through COVID times? Is we're all getting this instant delivery of stuff to our homes. And look, my wife told me never talk about American politics. I'm Canadian. I'm in a small city called Guelph, Ontario, Canada. But when the Jetsons met the Flintstones, it's almost kind of like they predicted American politics in the year 2021. Enough of that. Don't go there. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk about the real trends which define our future, the drivers of disruption, the trends which are changing our world at an absolutely furious pace. When I think about the year 2030, I think we're going to look back at the period of time today and realize that everything has changed. Here's what you need to think about what is happening. When you wake up in the year 2030, you're going to look back with fond memories of where we were in 2021. You're going to remember that we're in a world in which we used to drive cars. And those cars use gasoline and diesel, but now we're in the world 2030, and most of these cars are to a degree driving themselves, and they're big batteries on wheels, they're electric, they're autonomous. It has fundamentally changed. We don't drive cars anymore, we don't use oil and gas anymore, because everything has become electric. The world of farming, we will remember the world of farming. It used to be a world in which we only farmed when the sun was up, but then everything changed with spatial intelligence, with robotic technology, with self-driving farm vehicles, so that we were farming 24 hours a day. We no longer had to drive just when the sun was up. We'll remember the world of retail, and it's almost like pre-COVID. We used to go out to stores to get stuff, and then all the stuff came to us. We are seeing the emergence of a lot of sophisticated last-mile delivery technology, which is bringing the products to us, and the world of retail is being massively disrupted in fundamental ways. We will remember the world of healthcare. The world of healthcare in 2021 was a world in which we knew, we would get sick and we would go to the doctor to deal with those issues. But the impact of genomic medicine, DNA-based medicine, precision medicine, led us to a world in which increasingly we knew what we were going to become sick with. And we re-architected the delivery of healthcare resources based upon that knowledge. The world of manufacturing in the year 2030 is a world of mass customization. We moved from a world of mass production where we manufacture products which are all the same to a world in which we utilize 3D printing and end-of-runway manufacturing, a lot of sophisticated technologies to custom produce products for a market of one. And the world of manufacturing forever changed by the year of 2030. We'll remember that, we used to be in a world in which we used a lot of carbon energy. Here in my home in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, I've got solar on the roof. I've got a Tesla in the driveway. I am moving to a world which is all electric, all batteries, all integrated grids, and the entire world of energy changed by the year 2030 in a fundamental way, where renewables were the primary source of energy for everything that we did, because the electrical grid became intelligent, it became connected, and we had little microgrids. I got a little bit of energy, you got a little bit of energy, you got a little bit of renewables, I got a little bit of renewables, and we shared our energy amongst ourselves in a local community grid, just like we used to share music back in the Napster days. These are the trends which define my world. These are the trends which are taking us into a world in which the future belongs to those who are fast. And this literally changes everything. Do you know what's really going on? We are in a situation in which companies that do not yet exist will build products not yet conceived, using materials not yet invented, with methodologies not yet in existence. That's the reality of where we're going forward in the future. And I'm going to go back here and take a little bit of time for Q&A. What do you think is going on? Fire your questions into Zoom and we'll see if we can address these. And while you're doing that, this is where I'm talking to you from at this very moment in time. A green screen studio where everything is painted green with a whole bunch of gear, a whole bunch of technology. Somebody told me that the technology that I am using in this room a few years ago would have cost several hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the impact today is such that we can now do this type of thing for an extremely low cost. This is the reality of the disruptive world that we find ourselves in, where everything is changing on an absolutely furious basis. Fire your questions in. We'll have a moment to take them in and consider what is going on. One of the questions that just came in is, what do you think the real impact has been of the pandemic? And as you will soon see, what it has done is it has changed everything. Now, I'm going to glance about because I got a whole bunch of computers in here just to make sure that everything is working correctly. I'm monitoring the Zoom over in one window. I've got the polls working over in another window. I got a whole bunch of stuff happening, and so far it's all looking good. Let's do another question, and let's ask you the question this time of, do you think that your industry in 10 years' time is going to be the same as it is today? Again, what you do is you send a text message to the number 37607 and punch in one of these numbers. Do you think your industry will exist in just about the same form? Will it have changed just a little bit? Will it have been massively disrupted? Or will it be barely recognizable? And while you're sending in your votes, I'm going to take on a couple of these questions. You haven't mentioned the change in banking, currency, and Bitcoin, or different types of monetary exchanges. I actually wrote a document a number of years ago. I'm only a few minutes in. I can only cover so many trends. But I predicted the disappearance of cash back quite some time ago. And we'll cover crypto a little bit in a little while. As a small service business where we provide products and services to homes and businesses, what does the service industry look like in 2030? Partnership is everything. Watch for this section when I get into some of the trends which are defining our future, because I think what is happening is we now have an unparalleled opportunity to provide our products and provide our services to individuals, companies worldwide. You know, one of my last events pre-COVID was for the World Bank, and it was in Morocco, and it was about the future of the manufacturing sector in the global economy. And I had this quote in there: any manufacturer today is literally only 72 hours away from a customer anywhere in the future. That's the reality, the opportunity. Small business can do things that were never previously been possible. A whole bunch of questions coming in. This is absolutely fantastic. Marcus Wiersma says, how will all the focus and changes in automation affect the job market in 2030? Marcus, your future is full of opportunity. Baby June's going to be incredibly happy. What needs to change in education to prepare us for the fast future? You know, I'm a huge fan of community colleges, because I've discovered with community colleges, they're sort of the mindset of, you know, what is the business sector need right now? What does the manufacturing sector, for example, need in terms of new skills and new jobs? Cool, let's develop a course around that. I think community colleges have the ability to develop what I call just-in-time knowledge. And that's getting the right knowledge at the right time for the right purpose, for the right situations, because we're in a situation in which knowledge is becoming out of date faster than ever before. I'm going to come back to those questions in a little bit. Let's look at the poll here, though. What have people said? They expect that their industry will have been massively transformed. There's only a few folks who think it's going to exist in about the same form. There's a small percentage that thinks it will have changed a little bit. But look, this is common to most of the polls I do, where most people understand that there is massive disruption underway. Now, if you give me a moment, I'm going to go back to my stage, because that's where I'm a little bit more comfortable to talk about trends in the future. I'm going to jump into my spaceship. I mean, the future is space, why not? The key thing is, how has the future changed with the pandemic? This quote captures it all. COVID-19 is not a disruption. It's an accelerant. It's magnified and accelerated everything that is good and everything that is bad. Think about the voyage we have all been collectively through for almost a 2-year period of time. The world of retail talked about the need for e-commerce and home delivery, and all of a sudden they had to do e-commerce and home delivery. The world of education talked about telelearning, distance learning. All of a sudden they had to do distance learning. Even churches talked about virtual church services, and all of a sudden they had to do virtual church services. The world of healthcare talked about telehealth for the last 30 years. And all of a sudden, every single doctor visit had to go virtual. It really became crystal clear what was happening for me about 2 weeks into the pandemic. I was already working with my virtual broadcast studio. I was on a national news program talking about all the people around me who were busy reinventing at a furious pace. And I came across this story of a farmer outside of Toronto. This is a fellow who sold to farmers markets. He had a thriving business. COVID hit. And all of a sudden, his opportunity as a farmer completely disappeared. And I watched what he was saying on the national news program, where he said that literally in 2 weeks, what he did was he hired a bunch of university students and other individuals to deliver product to homes. He set up an electronic commerce site for people to buy the farmers market products. He literally virtualized his business, literally overnight. And that's what happened to all of us. I think what we've been through is we've been through a reality in which speed is everything. Think about the lessons we've learned. Essentially, every single industry, every single company, every single organization has learned how to compress 10 years of change into about 6 months. And what this did was it accelerated major trends: the virtualization of the workforce, electronic commerce, last mile delivery technologies. I can take any industry, and I speak to virtually every single industry, and I can point out examples of where the pandemic and our reaction to it has massively accelerated every single rate of change. And I think what occurred here is organizations truly learned something new about how to operate at speed. We talked for years about how to be a fast organization. Suddenly we had to do it. What occurred with this is that organizations discovered agility, flexibility, how to change course faster. Before the pandemic, I was spending time with companies like Mercedes and Boehringer Ingelheim and Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer to talk about how do we develop fast teams, how do we collaborate more, how do we become a fast-moving organization. And all of a sudden, everybody discovered, how do we actually do that? Because we had no choice. What this did was business models shifted faster than ever before. We have seen more disruption in the last 22 months than we have seen in the last 25 years. And part of this is that what happened here was the attitude that, it can't be done, that simply disappeared. I would spend a lot of time talking about what I call the innovation killers. These are the phrases we use that shut down our ability to pursue the future. Phrases like, you can't do that because we've always done it this way, or it won't work, or it's a dumb idea, or the boss won't go for it, or it's doomed to fail. All of these excuses disappeared because we simply had to get things done. Organizations learned something new about, the fact that they were no longer clogged up by decision-making paralysis. You notice there were no more committees around? Committees literally disappeared during COVID because the attitude of everybody throughout an organization was, look, we simply have to do it. There's no time to study this stuff. We simply have to get it done. And what that did was slow structure was put under a microscope, and old barriers to new ideas absolutely disappeared. There's nobody around anymore today who will use the phrase, well, you can't do that because we've always done it this way. That has literally disappeared because we know that we've had to operate at speed. That's because get it done became the rallying cry. These are 10 powerful trends which have forever shaped the world of business. You ever see the movie Spinal Tap? One of the greatest movies of all time. And one of my favorite scenes is when Nigel is talking to Rob Reiner and he's talking about his amplifier that goes to 11. And Rob Reiner is saying, yeah, but all you did was put a different number on the amplifier. And Nigel's going, yeah, but it goes to 11. One of the greatest scenes of movie history in all time. Well, any list has to go to 11. What I'm discovering with my global client base right now is it's all about how do we sustain that momentum. We learned to operate at speed. How do we keep it? How do we keep operating quickly? How do we keep operating faster? The bottom line is, no matter who you are, whether you are a lawyer, an accountant, a manufacturer, whether you are a retailer, whether you are a small business, your future is now faster. And it's not going back to a slow-paced world. You have learned to work at speed, and you now have to learn how to keep that speed with everything you do. And that's what I've been doing in the virtual broadcast studio here. I've been learning to build out, the capabilities of what I can do within this small 9x12 space, because I am convinced part of what is happening here is a fundamental change in our world going forward. So what are the trends which are really shaping our future? Well, I think what is happening is right now there are multiple trends coming together that are leading to this massive disruption to 2030 and which have accelerated with COVID. Number one, there is a whole bunch of trends coming together all at once. Virtual reality, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, 3D printing, robotics. What has happened here is so many ideas have come together all at once. It's almost like it's turned on the imagination machine of entrepreneurs worldwide, where they realize they can develop business models, they can develop products, they can pursue ideas, they can invent things at a speed that has never previously been possible before. Part of what is happening here is that a major part of this trend is that every single company, every single industry is becoming a software-driven industry. Think about cars. Think about the Tesla I've got in my driveway. It's not a car. It's a rolling, upgradable, hyper-tech platform on wheels. Think about the world of healthcare. Think about the blood pressure cuffs that we might have that are connected to the internet. Healthcare medical devices are becoming intelligent, connected things. And what happens here is that makes medical device companies a software company. Think about the world of agriculture as we get robotics and we get precision farming and we get these advanced technologies which bring us into a world in which we can farm 24 hours a day. The arrival of drone technology, the world of farming has become a software-driven industry. And what's really driving this is what we call hyperconnectivity, where every single device which is a part of our life today is becoming plugged in, connected. Now this could get weird. This could get out of hand. One morning, I might get up on my weigh scale. It's going to send an email over to my fridge. Don't let Jim in today. He's not living up to the terms of his deal. And then it's going to contact my insurance company and say, don't let Jim in the fridge today, and cut off his insurance coverage. But hyperconnectivity is a massive trend. Your car today is an upgradable, hyper-connected data gathering technology platform with wheels and a big battery. It's not a car anymore. You think about a Tesla. It's a high-tech platform. And think about the impact of this on the world of insurance. The world of insurance, we are moving in a world of insurance where we will underwrite your insurance risk based on looking back in time at your driving behavior to examining your driving behavior in real time. This is coming at us extremely quickly. Every single industry changes because of hyperconnectivity. I was in Nashville just before the pandemic with a company called Philips Medical Devices. And what we were explaining from the stage is that you're no longer selling a widget. You're no longer selling the single standalone device. You are selling a hyper-connected, intelligent, AI-driven thing, which happens to change the world of healthcare. But do you know what happens when every single industry becomes a software-driven industry? Moore's law defines the speed of change. And Moore's law is the law that the processing power of a computer chip doubles every 18 months and the cost cuts in half. That level of speed of change is coming to every single industry. And what that is doing is it's accelerating industries faster and faster. Products go out of date faster in this world. Think about how quickly you replace your iPhone. You're now replacing your iPhone every 18 months or 24 months or less. And we will be replacing our cars. We will be replacing devices in our homes. We will be replacing office infrastructure. We will be replacing everything faster because products now go out of date faster than ever before. One of the most fascinating trends is that science itself is accelerating. We have Fitbits for cows. I think this is absolutely one of the most fascinating trends that is out there. Fitbits for cows, collar devices, which can monitor the health of the animal. And those Fitbits for cows are monitored by drone technology. Drones flying over the herd, reading the data from the Fitbit for the cow. Well, what do drones have? They have batteries. What's the problem with batteries? Batteries run out of juice. Drones can't stay in the air too long, but there is a tremendous amount of scientific research going into drone battery technology to make drones stay in the air longer. What happens with that? Batteries are at the heart of everything. Batteries are at the heart of our electric vehicles. They're at the heart of our electrical grid. They're at the heart of what we will do in the future as we take the solar off our roof and the wind in our backyard and store it into batteries in our backyard and feed it into the electrical grid at the end of the day. This cost of battery storage technology has declined by 97% in the last 3 decades. I wrote this blog post some time ago. You remember the movie The Graduate? And the young Dustin Hoffman is speaking to the older fellow, and he says, I've got one word for you about the future, plastic. I've got one word for you about the future, and it's batteries. It's not just battery science. Every single aspect of science is changing. I spoke to one group once, and I said, here's a fascinating statistic. Right now, there are about 19 million known chemical substances, and that number is doubling every 13 years. So by the year 2025, we are going to have 80 million known chemical substances. But by the year 2100, there will be 1 billion known chemical substances. Well, you're wondering, what the heck does this mean to me? Here's a really interesting story. 19 million known chemical substances to 1 billion. It was the discovery of one single new chemical substance that permitted Apple to miniaturize the hard drive for the original Apple iPod. The discovery of one single new chemical substance led to the birth of a billion-dollar industry. One substance, and we're going from 19 million to 1 billion. We are on the precipice with scientific acceleration of the discovery of the unknown, products that do not yet exist. I think one of the most fascinating trends which is accelerating in our future is what we call edge thinking. Crowdfunding networks where somebody with an idea can now go to a global audience and seek out the funding, convincing them of their idea of what is possible and bring that to market. What this is really doing is this is accelerating ideas. New ideas can come to our world faster than ever before. Because really what is going on in the world of incubators, in the world of product discovery, in the world of startups, in the world of small organizations, they can now bring products to market faster than ever before. Context of all this, knowledge itself is absolutely exploding. Somebody asked in the Q&A, what about education? Here's a reality about education. Existing knowledge is going out of date extremely quickly at the same time that new knowledge is appearing. And what that is doing is leading to the birth of new careers, new opportunities. My 28-year-old son works as a drone pilot. He's building an air force for a commercial industrial real estate firm. He's working in a job that did not exist when he was a child. 65% of kids in preschool today will work in a job or career that does not yet exist because of the acceleration of knowledge. You know, in the world of healthcare, the volume of medical knowledge right now, it used to be doubling every 8 years. And now with the acceleration of COVID science and everything having to do with the pandemic, the volume of global medical knowledge is now doubling every 78 days. No one medical professional can know everything they need to know to deal with the reality of what is occurring out there. And what this leads to is massive specialization of skills, the niching of skills, just-in-time knowledge, instant knowledge obsolescence, the rapid emergence of new knowledge. And what are we going to do in an educational setting to deal with this reality? We have to develop the ability to get the right knowledge to the right industries at the right time for the right purpose. A world of accelerating knowledge leads to the domination of partnerships because organizations can't do everything on their own. Have you noticed all the little startups coming about because of Amazon and home delivery? There's a lot of last mile delivery companies which are appearing, and there's actually the arrival of a lot of last mile delivery technology, little robotic machines which will deliver products to your home. I was actually in Texas with a home builder. They're putting driveway drone pads in the new homes they're building because they fully expect that one day in the future there will be little drones flying in to deliver product. Well, retailers are going to do that with partners who can help them get there. Somebody in the Q&A asked about small organizations. This is an unprecedented time for small organizations to define the future. Small organizations can even move faster than big organizations. Look at the company Square, who developed this little credit card reader by which merchants could accept credit cards. And they did this in the context of a world in which American Express and Visa and MasterCard could not operate at speed. All of this is happening in the context in which organizations are reinventing revenue faster. We're in a situation in which if products are going out of date faster than ever before, organizations are having to come up with new products faster than ever before. And here's a really interesting story from the world of food and nutraceuticals. There's a company in Australia or Israel called Mina. And what they've realized is that your glycemic index for an apple might be different from somebody else's glycemic index for an apple. And using iPhone technology and using medical device sensing technology, we can develop an app by which people can do customizable, programmable, real-time food planning based upon instant health assessment, based upon real-time analysis of blood sugars, utilizing the mobile devices which are so much a part of their lives. Well, you know who's really interested in this as a trend? Organizations like BASF, Johnson & Johnson, Nestle. They view this as a $4 billion market opportunity that's going to emerge in the next 5 years. They're in a situation in which they realize that their future comes from a world in which they can generate tomorrow revenue from products which do not yet exist today. How are you going to do that going forward into a fast-paced future? Oh, this is happening. I'm about 2 minutes before our next Q&A, in which attention spans are absolutely collapsing. You know, a study said the typical goldfish today has a longer attention span than a human. When we go into a grocery store, We are scanning some 12 feet of shelf space per second. We have no attention spans left. And that's why one of the most profound trends going forward is we need to shorten our story. We need to challenge ourselves in terms of brand perception. Another trend we need to watch is that distributed technologies are defining our future. In my home, I've got solar on my roof, I've got my Tesla in the driveway, and somebody will put together the technology for battery storage technology in which we can build a little microgrid to share energy amongst ourselves in the neighborhood. This is an emerging billion-dollar industry. Virtualization is maturing. All these kids playing video games, they're not playing video games. Look at a kid today who's playing Farmville. What are they really doing? They're developing the skills to manage a 24-hour farming operation via virtualization technology. I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I was actually using a virtual weld headset, managing a welding machine thousands of miles away. What's the impact on skills? Companies in the future will not have the skills they need to do things that need to get done. They're going to have to partner. They're going to have to specialize. They're going to have to, be able to access. You ever notice the Maytag Repairman? His role has changed. Now, the Maytag Repairman, they used to run a commercial that, he would come on TV and he was the loneliest man in the world because Maytags never broke down. Maytag Repairman came into our home quite some time ago, and he said, your washer is broken. He didn't have tools, he had a laptop. He plugged in the laptop, he rebooted it, reprogrammed it, and it worked. One day soon, your front doorbell is going to ring, and the Maytag Repairman is going to be there. You're going to say, I didn't call the Maytag Repairman. And he's going to say, no, you didn't, but your washer did because your washer told me it was going to break down. We are witnessing so much change, and what this is doing is leading to a fundamental shift in business models. This is what the future is all about. And this is what's going to take us into the year 2030. It takes us into this world that the quote that I put out there, the companies that do not yet exist will build products not yet conceived, using materials not yet invented, with methodologies not yet in existence. So let's zip back into the Q&A and take on some of these. It seems that federal and state government will be the major obstruction to do things faster and more innovative. What is the solution? I've done a lot of talks for organizations in which the issue of regulatory agencies has come out. So the Food and Drug Administration is an example. They've tried to book me for a speech 3 times and they couldn't get through the process of actually contracting. What we are having is a massive mismatch between the speed of change and the ability of regulatory authorities to deal with that speed of change. And they know this is an issue. They know there's a challenge. And we're actually sort of seeing that play out in real time right now with Tesla and self-driving, where Tesla is moving forward extremely quickly with a degree of self-driving technology, and the National Safety Administration is working to figure out how do we deal with the reality of that? How do we manage in the context of what we were doing 40 years ago with the management of highway and road technology to deal with self-driving? And they're not really prepared and able to cope with that. We're seeing a little bit of that with the FDA, with the inability to rapidly approve new forms of treatment and new forms of diagnosis. Regulatory mismatch is a tremendous challenge going forward. Here's something coming in from Mira Jordan. I appreciate the acceleration in general, but Apple is actually reducing production due to weak demand for new iPhones to replace old ones. I've invested in several different computers in the last year or two, but they have a cycle of 3 years. Doesn't the fluidity of software also mean longer product cycles? Let's take on what that question really means. What's happening, which I think is a fundamental change, is when we make products into computers, we can fundamentally change the nature of that product by utilizing software upgrades. So my Tesla in my garage, every once in a while, it receives a software upgrade that fundamentally changes what it can do. And that's a fascinating trend. We could have a medical device that if some new medical circumstance arrives, we can simply roll out a software update and fundamentally change the nature of that medical device. So what happens here is at the same time that product life cycles are collapsing, yes, we can extend them because we can do a software upgrade which fundamentally changes the very nature of the product. You'll notice I put up another poll here. What I've discovered in a lot of organizations is we develop these barriers, these excuses, the innovation killers which hold us back from truly pursuing the future. And I always have fun with this one because I'm asking you, what innovation excuse do you encounter in your organization? Go at it, send in your message, send in your poll. We'll get the summary results. It's always fun to see what we come up with. And I'll take on a few more questions while we do this. Edward Nazieda, pardon my pronunciation, asked, what are your thoughts on the metaverse? Facebook announcing themselves as Meta, these virtual headsets. Look, I was on a service in 2007 called Second Life, and I look at what Facebook is doing right now, and it's really, wasn't I doing that in 2007? I don't have big hopes for what Facebook is talking about. I think we will see a lot of fascinating trends come about with what a virtual heads-up display, where Google Glass 2.0, I might have glasses which give me information within the glass, which is letting me see a product manual. I think we'll see a lot of that. I think we will see the virtualization of a lot of services, not utilizing these headset technologies, but the idea of the kid, growing up playing Farmville, and they're going to sit at their computer and they're going to be driving a tractor out in the field, 2,000 feet away. How will speed impact the global supply chain? We're seeing that right now. Everything is so interconnected. Everything is so dependent upon each other that part of what we are seeing with the supply chain is issues of where it breaks down, where it goes bad. It can go really bad real quick. But it's not just the supply chain. You are hearing a lot about the chip shortage and companies making excuses they can't get products to market because they can't get the chips. There's other things going on with the chip shortage. There's actually a whole show on my website where I go behind the scenes on the chip shortage and talk about automotive manufacturers. For example, traditional auto manufacturers, they're really struggling to keep up with the speed of change. And some of them are trying to get chips which were originally invented in the year 2004. They're going to chip companies and say, we need these chips. And chip companies are going, like what? We're not making chips that are 17 years old. The reality of what is occurring here is a lot of the technology in today's car is old, it's obsolete. And so when things broke down, car companies don't really matter to chip companies. They're about 5% of total demand. Chip companies actually make more money in selling chips to gaming console companies, Xboxes, and stuff like that. So it's not just supply chains that we're seeing break down. We're seeing a lot of a sort of a speed mismatch unfold in the economy. Anonymous attendee, will in-person work bounce back at all, or is the future almost all virtual work? Let me ask this question. How many of you are enjoying working at home and not having to go into an office? I've been working at home for 33 years, and for me, it's kind of like, nothing has changed for me, and I can build this extremely sophisticated virtual broadcast studio and do amazing things. I had trips to Detroit and Orlando a couple of weeks ago for in-stage, in-person events, and it was a lot of fun getting on stage, but the whole travel experience, I think people have discovered the joys of working at home and really like it. One more question, and then I'll go back to my stage. Tracy Hornbeck asking, any futuristic trends you are seeing in wealth management? My 26-year-old son is a wealth management professional working for a large wealth management firm, and huge trends unfolding there. Go to the issue of collapse of attention spans. People aren't reading long investment documents. They are getting their investment advice on Reddit and on Twitter feeds and on social media, and it's influencing them in new and different ways. The collapse of attention spans has a profound impact. I was actually with the National Australia Bank in 2009 talking about the future of wealth management and wrote this post, 14 trends defining the future of wealth management, and much of that has come true. So keep the questions coming in. I'm going to go back to my stage and give a little bit of a wrap up in terms of where this is taking us. And one thing I need to do with so much gear, I got to make sure all my technology is on the right spot so that everything is working correctly. And I'm getting a little bit of a error coming through. So what this is doing is it's leading to a lot of big, bold thinking, where organizations are realizing they can do things in ways that were not previously possible. The great thing about going live is there's always that one little hiccup that can impact you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to skip out of that section. And what the heck is going on here? This is exciting. I'm going to kill my remote, come back to my remote, and there we go. Now we're live. This is why you test and why you check your configuration. So what does this lead to? Well, I've actually spent a lot of time with a lot of really big organizations talking about their future and helping them understand what does disruption lead to. I can calm down now. I got my little remote working again. I was with Whirlpool and Maytag, and the best way to paraphrase it is that they realize they're no longer an appliance manufacturer. They understand that the impact of hyperconnectivity is that they are now a company which happens to manufacture highly intelligent, hyper-connected devices that wash our clothes and cook our food. And that everything changes once they turn those products into computers. I was with a company called Columbus McKinnon. Somebody asked earlier about cryptocurrency and blockchain and stuff like that. This is a company that manufactures overhead cranes used in manufacturing facilities. And they realize the future of those overhead cranes is going to be tightly bound up with the arrival of blockchain in manufacturing. And as a blockchain comes to drive supply chain integration and also what it does in terms of maintenance and warranty services for that technology. Real-time insurance. I was with New York Life. And New York Life realizes the world of life insurance, we're no longer going to insure you based upon a urine test or a blood test looking back at past behavior. We are going to insure you based upon live real-time information coming from your blood pressure cuff, coming from real-time glucose tests, coming from your wellness performance. They're realizing they're not going to insure people based on looking back, but they're going to underwrite insurance policies based on looking forward. Look, I was with a company in St. Louis called Amstead Rail. Amstead Rail manufactures the rail bogies, the undercarriage of rail cars. And they realize that what they've got to do with those rail car bogies is they've got to make them hyper-connected so they can predict when they're going to break down. So Internet of Things technology. And they realize that what they need to do is they need to accelerate their manufacturing capabilities through 3D printing technology. Their entire future of manufacturing is defined by 3D printing. I was with the Volvo and Mack Trucks, and Volvo and Mack Trucks, they know they don't sell trucks anymore. They know that they now sell highly connected vehicles that can tell you when they're going to break down. We have engineered so much technology into the typical truck today that it contains more technology than a Cessna airplane. And Volvo can tell you when your truck is going to break down, and rather than selling a company a fleet of 1,000 trucks, they will sell a service level uptime guarantee. They're going to tell you when it's going to break down, and they're going to tell you to pull a truck off the road before you send it out on a long distance delivery through the remote roads of Arizona. That's worth money to you. They're actually at that point in their business model. As with Philips Healthcare, where they understand that they're no longer selling medical devices, but they're selling something which is fundamentally different because it's now a service. It's an artificially intelligent, hyper-connected thing. It's not a widget anymore. I was with Mercy Virtual, a healthcare hospital institution out in St. Louis and out in the Midwest. And long before COVID, they realized the world of virtualized medicine defined everything. The hospital of the future is no longer defined by the physical walls of the building, but is defined by the reach of its virtual networks. If we've got a patient at home who is a senior, we can monitor that patient through a remote blood pressure cuff, and we can do virtual medicine. They're thinking, how do we virtualize the hospital for the reality, the opportunity that technology gives us today? And literally 3 months before COVID hit, I was with the global leadership team of Pfizer over in Paris, talking about all the trends that we are seeing emerge in the world of healthcare today, accelerated genomic science and telehealth and virtualization of medicine. All this stuff I'm talking about is real. It's all happening right now. It's all a part of our world. The thing is, there's a lot of organizations that don't step up to the plate, whether they're small or large. One of my most fascinating situations, I was with Motorola back in 2006. And back in 2006, Motorola was selling the Razr phone. It was sort of like a flip phone. And they were, everybody's always going to want a Razr. We're golden. There's no threats in our horizon. And I went in and said, look, Apple might release a device. The BlackBerry is out there. You might find yourself in a world in which your success going forward into the future isn't real. And they, like many organizations, became complacent where Motorola is today. I mean, they're no longer in the market. What you really need to do with the future is you need to change your future before the future changes you. Every morning I get up and I take some photo from a stage or my virtual stage, and I put some future-oriented quote. And one morning, this is the thought that came to my mind. Change your future before the future changes you. And certainly that's what I'm doing here in the virtual broadcast studio as I reinvent at a furious pace to deal with the reality of what is coming next. We know the world of medicine is going to be fundamentally different. We know that the world of energy is going to change. We know that the world of transportation is undergoing a fundamental shift. We know the world of agriculture is changing at a furious pace. We know the world of manufacturing is changing. We know the world of optometric services is changing. Everywhere we look, there are fundamental trends underway. It doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, an accountant, a doctor, an office worker, a CEO, a senior VP. Your industry in 10 years is not going to look anything like it does today because the change is profound, it's accelerating, and it's coming at us with speed. So we've got a few minutes for a few final questions. While we do that, let's go back to the poll because that was kind of fun. What innovation excuse do we encounter? We've got a tie. It's too risky. We don't need to do it right now. It's not necessary. So if we add together it's not necessary and it's too risky, we come up to 44%. That's complacency. That's the attitude which can kill us in the long run because everything is changing. We don't need to do it right now. If you're not going to do it now, when are you going to do it? It won't work. You have to try to do things you haven't done before. It's the only way to truly get ahead. Let's come back to the Q&A and see if anything else has come in. What are your thoughts on the metaverse? Are there any black swan events which might undo the assumptions of accelerated change? I'm working on my next show. I put out these little regular shows from my virtual broadcast studio here. And I'm working on one right now around the theme of VUCA. I think that's going to be the big trend which is going to define our future. VUCA is a leadership concept that says essentially our future is bound up in volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That's the black swan event. We truly don't know what's going to happen next. And so from a leadership perspective, we have to develop the ability to deal with anything. And I think we got better at that in terms of what we were doing with the pandemic. We learned so many new rules. I'll come back to a question from Jacqueline Taylor because I really didn't get into it. I try to cover a lot of ground when I'm on, quote, my virtual stage here. You haven't mentioned the change in banking, currency and Bitcoin, or different types of monetary exchanges. Let me answer it this way. I think something powerful is emerging with blockchain technology. My professional background is I'm actually a CPA, certified professional accountant. 40 years ago I was doing that type of stuff. I'm very far away from it. I was with predecessor firms of Ernst & Young and KPMG. And I think blockchain from a transaction ledger perspective is massive. Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, there's something we call the Gartner hype cycle that says that any technology which comes to our world, it goes through a curve. We hit the peak of inflated expectations, then we hit what we call the trough of disillusionment, and then the plateau of productivity. And it's difficult to truly judge when that technology is going to mature. And that's where I think we are with crypto right now, with a lot of the cryptocurrency that is out there. Little bit of a bubble? Yeah. Is there potential for a crash? Yeah. I was around through the dot-com years. I predicted the dot-com collapse about 9 months before it happened, and I took a lot of abuse for that, and then boom, it happened, and a lot of people lost a lot of money. So if you don't know what you're doing, be cautious. We've got 3 minutes, 51 seconds to go, so I'm going to go back to my stage and do a little bit of a wrap-up, and my cursor is giving me the same issue. Isn't that exciting? So I'm going to turn it off and turn it on again. And you got to consider for all the gear that I've got happening in here, it's kind of fascinating. We've made it this far with everything going correctly. So how do I close? What do I want to cover in the close? I would often get on stage and I would go through what I call my 10 great words. The 10 great words, one is observe. You've got to spend some time to observe the future and understand what is happening. The second one is think. You've got to think about what these trends mean to you, to your business, where your business might be going in the future. And you've got to focus on change. What are you going to change in terms of your approach to the future? And where are you going to take some risks? Where are you going to try to do things? I'm over here in another camera. Where are you going to try and do some things you haven't done before? That's been half the joy for me in this virtual broadcast studio, because I'm really always pushing the boundaries here. You have to banish. You have to banish those innovation killer phrases and attitudes which can hold you back. And to do that, you have to try to do some things you haven't done before. You should come up with a list of new ideas, new opportunities, new skills, and try and do those things, because it's only by trying to do those things that you can get ahead. You should empower. You should empower yourself with knowledge, learn how to do things you haven't done before. You have to question. We develop assumptions and habits and routines which can hold us back from the future. You have to focus on growth. You have to focus on opportunity. You have to focus yourself into a mindset of optimism every single day. And the 10th word is do. You get to that, you get to the 11th most important word of all of innovation, and that's enjoy. So we'll pop back here. That's bringing me up to 1:33. We've got one more question, and then I'm going to hand it back to Stacy so that we're all on time and you've taken your lunch hour to participate. So thank you for coming in. Last question. We're seeing wealth gaps get even larger. The implications of separating. Oh, and my sound apparently is off. Now it's good. And so that might be baby June reporting in. We're seeing wealth gaps get even larger. The implications of separating productivity from labor. What needs to ensure that this future is accessible to all youth and not those just with access? Well, that's really sort of a political question where you come down the political spectrum. I was raised that a society can do best if we try to raise up everybody in society at an equal pace. Some people in this today's age seem to think differently. So with that, Stacy, I'll bring it back to you. We covered a heck of a lot of ground there. Only one tiny little thing went wrong with my remote control, so you have to live on the edge. And hopefully we've inspired you all to align to a world in which the future belongs to those who are fast.
Thank you, Jim. It was incredible. You covered a lot of ground, and we're really grateful for your time and energy today. So thank you. In appreciation for the time you've given us today, we're going to sponsor a local student here in Grand Rapids with a one-year junior achievement membership in your name. So thank you again so much for your wisdom and your insight. So our next meeting and the kickoff to our 2022 season will take place on January 10th. And while I can't quite announce our speaker yet, please know it's going to be a fantastic event. Watch for information about the speaker in the coming days and how you can register that event on January 10th. Again, I want to encourage you to consider giving the gift of an Econ Club membership this holiday season to somebody in your workplace, or your family, or your friend network. It's really a great way to help them connect, get informed, and be inspired. I want to thank again our season partners, Aon, Consumers Energy, Ernst & Young, Miller Johnson, PNC Bank, and Spectrum Health.